Welcome everyone to Pod 18. Yeah, so we are back to our weekly rhythm now. I mean, prior to the last one, we had a long break, and but then now Akshan is back at home, so we are back to our weekly rhythm, and we've got so much to cover in this pod. Yeah,
Absolutely. The last one was a recap of everything that happened over a period of 2 months. But this, after a week, we've still got a very interesting batch of news. So, in 72 hours, the US government switched off the most powerful public AI on earth. And that set the tone. SpaceX IPO'd as an AI company and not a space exploration or a rocket company, and then bought Cursor for $60 billion. OpenAI poached the Transformers co inventor and the author of American's AI Action Plan. China's GLM 5.2 took the open weights crown. Bezos stepped up as CEO again after 5 years, and Bezos's physical AI bet raised $12 billion. And a Ukrainian insider claimed autonomous drones picked their own targets, one through line. This month, AI stopped being a product and became geopolitics.
well, absolutely. I mean, so AI. So, like you rightly said, last pod we covered pretty much 1.5 month worth of news, but this week we have got almost equivalent amount of news. There is so much happening right across the board. So like you
Absolutely.
rightly started with Fable, right? So last week we were super excited about Fable getting released, and we were playing with Fable, and we were hoping to play up until at least 21st or 22nd,
Yeah.
whatever was the cutoff deadline. But then all of a sudden it was pulled back, right? So that was like a shocker for us, and
Absolutely.
that was, yeah, really a bummer for us.
I believe we filmed the podcast on 10th or 11th, and the next day it was shut down. So, actually, we'll just get started with Anthropic in detail. Fable 5 got banned, the biggest news, of course. And let's start with our experience with using Fable, and then we'll get into
Yeah, I
the.
think we covered a little bit of that on last pod as well. Like I said, it was like super intelligent model, and I was looking forward to solving a lot of different problems that I was facing with my other projects, and had lined up a lot of things to be done by this 21st or 22nd of June. But then all of a sudden we were kind of on a vacation with family when we heard the news on 12th of June around 5:21 p.m. ET, right? That's where the Anthropic got an order from US government, and they pulled the model off for everybody across the board. So that was like a shocker for us. So I mean, when I saw that news on Twitter where it said Anthropic has pulled out the model for, so US government had issued an order that the model should not be accessible to anybody who's other than US citizens, whether they are either within the US or outside of US, but they should not be able to access that model, right? So that was like a viral moment everywhere, all across the board. That letter was getting shared, and everybody was thinking about sovereign models, and everybody started thinking. So I had been thinking about this time when US government or US would stop sharing their models with people, and there were lots of people on Twitter and across the board who were thinking sometime maybe this could happen, right? So that moment came alive on 12th of June or 13th for us, right? So basically that was something which was shock, as well as, yeah, it was kind of expected that sometime probably that would happen.
Absolutely. And I'll just get into the specifics of Fable getting banned.
Yeah, yeah.
So this started on 10th of June, I believe. There was this very famous person on Twitter by the username Pliny the Liberator. And he actually was able to jailbreak the model within a couple of hours. He posted the entire over 100,000 character prompt on Twitter as well. And after that, I believe some sources mention that Dario Amadeo or Anthropic in general got a notice from the US government that either fix the jailbreak or pull down the model, and they refused both of those. So the government had to step in. And of course, I mean, Anthropic was constantly saying the model is very, very powerful, very risky. So,
Absolutely. Started a lot earlier prior to this, basically. So Anthropic had a tussle going on with US government, where US government had kind of designated them as supply chain risk, right? And then they had appealed in a court, and then they got an injunctive relief, right? So that's where they were kind of operating. So they already had, like friction with the government,
Absolutely.
right? And then later on, when Mythos came out, they were like, this is a super powerful model. This model, not everybody should be able to access. This model is, it can make or break things, right? So they kind of popularized it, right?
Absolutely.
Like that. It is like Mythos, nobody should be able to access except for the ones, who are in Glasswing, under Glasswing project. So that was their, setup, right? And then they later on went on to release Mythos as Fable 5, and they said they've made it secure, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, like you rightly said, this guy Pliny, right?
Yeah.
He was able to jailbreak it, and it seems like he was able to jailbreak it from the version that was hosted through Bedrock from AWS.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, AWS is a partner for Anthropic. They've invested like $4 billion into Anthropic, which is why they're able to kind of host those models and stuff, right? So now, instead of reporting that jailbreak to Anthropic, AWS or Amazon went directly to the US government and they reported it there, right? And 2 days prior to the release of Fable, Anthropic had kind of pushed the US government that they should exercise control on models. They should probably make the release secure and things like that. So that was a very interesting stage set up for US government. On one side, you're saying that this model should not be accessible to everybody. This is like super powerful model. On the other side, you're saying, US government should regulate and they should come back and, kind of, if there is something bad happening, they should probably step in, right?
Absolutely.
And then this happened where the jailbreak was happening on the Fable model, where people were able to access it in the capacity of Mythos, right? So that's where government, like you rightly said, asked them to either patch that vulnerability, right?
Or take the model
off, or make it only, So Dario kind of, refused both of those, and that's where US government kind of issued the order to only make it accessible to US citizens. So that was like, if they'd told them to take the model off completely, that was a different story. But then making it accessible only to the US citizens, that's where the whole internet went, berserk basically. So everybody was like, what kind of order is that? So,
absolutely. So that's the most interesting part actually, because it's not just US citizens that are allowed. Even Anthropic employees that are not US citizens are not allowed to work or use, not work on Mythos either. So recently, Anthropic recently hired Andrej Karpathy. So that's a very interesting.
Well, absolutely. So Andrej Karpathy is not a US citizen right now. He's on some visa, which is specialized visa for So that's where he even would not be able to access those models, right?
Yeah.
So that's where Dario took a call and he took the model down, and then he kind of was willing to issue refunds as well. So up until they've sent out an email that if you've bought the plan or something for Fable, and because it's been pulled down, if you want the refund by 20th of June, you can claim that refund and things like that. So that's where so that was a shocker. That was pretty much the start of the week, and that's where it was difficult to
So the most interesting thing that I found was Project Glasswing came to a halt because of this entire scenario, right?
Oh yeah. So a lot of people had access to, a lot of enterprises had access to Mythos through Project Glasswing, but now because government order came in, both Fable and Mythos are offline, and nobody's able to access that. So on 12th June at 5:21, the order came in, and they were supposed to shut it down within 90 minutes.
90 minutes, yeah.
So without any warning to any user, all of a sudden the workloads which were running and everything came to a grinding halt, and the model was pretty much offline. And that global blackout was absolutely, kind of not expected, but that happened, and that became a viral story across the internet.
It had to happen because Anthropic didn't have any way to ensure if a US citizen is accessing the model or
Obviously,
not.
currently when we sign up, we don't provide any information whether we are US citizen or not.
Absolutely.
So either they modify their sign up and then people start disclosing who are US citizens, who are Indian citizens and things like that, which I doubt lots of people would probably not even do that. So at least in the interim, the model is offline, and then we'll see. It seems like, Anthropic top brass is kind of, going to White House and negotiating with the government again, but nothing has come out, at least as of today. Let's see what happens. So it's almost been a week, right? So that's where, yeah, everybody's kind of waiting, and I'm hoping that they'll be able to get things cleared, because lots of rumors are there. GPT 5.6 is going to be almost the same class as Mythos or Fable, right? So would that also be kind of, restricted? What will happen? So those speculations are going, across Twitter or internet, that what will happen to the next level of models that are going to be at the Mythos or Fable level. So that's what's going on right now.
Absolutely. And in fact, I read this somewhere, but that Microsoft had separately barred the staff, their staff, before even the export ban happened, because of the
Yeah, so basically, like we had discussed on the last pod, there was 0-day retention of logs for all other models.
That's
but
right.
for this one, they had 30 days. So a lot of enterprises had not opted for that, and they were not accessing the model. So yeah, even Microsoft had already, kind of decided to pull out of, Anthropic this thing, right?
I mean, they're already invested heavily in OpenAI.
Oh
so
yeah,
that makes
almost every
sense.
company has invested in Anthropic as well as OpenAI. So that's yeah, that I think is pretty much on this one, at least as of now, right? And yeah, so then
My favorite news.
moving on to the biggest story of this week, right? So last pod we talked about SpaceX would be going, public on the 12th, was it?
Yeah, it
Right?
was, yes.
Yeah, so 12th of June, last Friday, it was supposed to go live on stock market, and then it listed. And what a spectacular listing for them.
Absolutely. So the most interesting thing was SpaceX was made public as an AI company and not a space exploration company. So I think that is one reason why its valuation is at such a level as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they had like 1.75, 1.77 trillion dollars kind of, valuation when they went public.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And basically the stock was priced at $135 for the listing, right? And the day it opened, it went up to 161 immediately, pretty much. So that was like 19-20%, increment immediately. And then it's been almost a week. Like this Friday we are doing it now, right? So it's almost been a week since listing, and the stock is trading around $181, right? Which is almost 35%, 34% increment since the stock listing price, right?
Wow.
So briefly, so Elon Musk has become the first
trillionaire in this world. Yeah.
Absolutely. So he's become the first trillionaire, and briefly, SpaceX was able to kind of surpass Microsoft as in valuation as well. Although it came back, and now it's at the fourth number, I think, right, behind Apple and Microsoft and Nvidia, right?
Yeah.
But it's ahead of Tesla, and it's ahead of Amazon. So that's where, yeah, it's almost $2.7 trillion kind of company right now, which is like unprecedented. I mean, you list a company as the biggest IPO, $1.77 trillion, and then it climbs up 35% to become 2.7 trillion. And you rightly said, it's because of the AI play that they have, right? Although they're struggling with their X.com merged into XAI, right? And then XAI merged into SpaceX.
That's right.
So SpaceX has XAI plus X, plus they have this Solar City, plus they have this Starlink, right? So all of them combined together are part of SpaceX, and that's where they've got such a valuation. But primary play here is the AI, which is they'll be having Dyson Swarm or things like that, right? In this space, they're planning to have their data centers. That's the dream that SpaceX is selling, and people are buying it. People are so they've raised huge amount of capital, and basically while that is happening, they're struggling with their models on like XAI's models are Grok models are not very good, so they're still struggling to create their models and have them be in the mainstream. But that, it seems like with Musk there, is not a huge problem, although it seems like, because the founding team has already left.
Right? That's right.
And they've hired some other people, and they're experimenting again. So that's where, although the model part is still not sorted, but everything else, because Musk is the best manufacturer, right, kind of person in the across the globe. right? So that's where everybody's kind of believing in his capability of having a space-based, data centers and then relaying those AI model inferences across, with Starlink too. So he's got a very unique stack there, which is what is, driving this valuation up. And then AI hype is also causing some people to buy into this stock. So that's what's going on here. I mean, this is like unprecedented. It's never been seen again prior to this. And I don't know if somebody's going to surpass this, $1.77 trillion kind of IPO. At least, yeah, although OpenAI and Anthropic would be listing this year, but my guess is they'll be somewhere around 1 trillion.
That's right.
So this milestone would be difficult for somebody to beat for some time.
So the most interesting thing was why people were discussing why is SpaceX being listed at $1.7 trillion when the best, and it's being listed as an AI company, right?
Yeah.
The best AI companies in the world, Anthropic and OpenAI, are barely touching $1 trillion in valuation. So of course he had to do that. Grok models aren't performing very well. So SpaceX recently bought 3 days ago, they bought Cursor, the IDE, AI powered IDE for $60 billion. And I just thought that is phenomenal, right? That company was founded 4 years ago. In 4 years ago, they went from zero to $60 billion.
So this is primarily the talent acquisition kind of deal, I think, right? So Cursor recently launched a model,
that's right,
which was competing with GPT 5.5 and which was very small model that they've created, right?
That's right.
So that's where, and XAI is struggling with creating models, right? So one part is, where you get that talent to build your model, right? So it could be a talent acquisition as well. But alongside in this whole stack that Musk has, he doesn't have that IDE or the development, harness for the model.
No actual AI product as such, right?
Yeah. So which is where Cursor, brings in that capability as well, right? So Cursor is already popular. Enterprises are already using it. So I mean, across the board within SpaceX, most of the companies are currently in loss except for Starlink, I think, right? Which is $1 billion kind of, profit per month, pretty much. But that's like minimal, right? Because Google and Microsoft, which are in the same league at valuation terms, so Google is almost at $90 billion kind of profit, right? So that's where SpaceX is still, kind of not there in terms of revenue, but the promise, the vision that Elon Musk is able to sell, is able to, give to the people is what is, getting him that valuation. And people know that if Elon Musk promises something, he kind of mostly achieves it, right? So that's what SpaceX is all about, I think. And then, this Cursor acquisition is huge. $60 billion within 4 years, but this primarily is about the talent wars, which is going on right now. Everybody, I mean, there are very, very, very few people who know how to train the model from ground up, right? So this is that act coming into play here. I think with the Cursor acquisition, they should be able to improve their models, and then anyways they are getting the harness that they can use with, so that makes their stack completely, from the harness to the model to the data center to the chips and to the Dyson swarm. And so that's a unique position that
Elon Musk
SpaceX has currently. And then people are kind of guessing, there will be merger of SpaceX and Tesla very soon, probably this year itself. So that will bring the robotics also in here. So that will make it a very, very formidable kind of company. I mean, nothing within AI which is not within SpaceX. So that's gonna be a big force to fight with. So that will be a very, very interesting competitor for Google and everybody else as well, right? If that happens, and that most likely would happen. But so that's
and the interesting thing is, last year we saw Windsurf was broken down and acquired by Google. And this year we see the biggest competitor, that is Cursor, is now being it's taken under SpaceX.
Absolutely. Yep.
Moving on to OpenAI and OpenAI's talent trade. So they recently hired 2 very, very important players in the AI field. And this is the second time the US government will be mentioned in this podcast. So they recently hired Gemini's co-lead, Noam Shazir, and he was also the co-inventor of transformer platform basically.
Well, absolutely. I mean, so SpaceX has already listed. OpenAI and Anthropic are looking for listing, right? So that's where both of these companies are looking to, kind of distinguish themselves from the other. I mean, they're looking at a very high price for listing for pretty much $1 trillion kind of valuation, right?
That's
So
right.
that's it. They'll be raising a lot of money, and which is where they're trying to kind of position themselves as like the leading company, right? So which is where OpenAI seems to have been able to hire Neo Zir
Yeah, that's
from Google, right? So Google had kind of hired him like couple years back in 2024 for $2.7 billion, right? But they were not able to retain him for more than 2 years, right? So
Absolutely.
that's the kind of talent wars which is going on, which is what we were referring to at with SpaceX as well. So $16 billion kind of acquisition, right? So now this guy Neom Shazir was hired a couple of years back. Now he's moved on to OpenAI, and like Akshan already said, he is credited with the invention of a lot of things, from transformer to mixture of experts model to multi-query attention kind of thing. So he is somebody who's called inventor engineer. Like he's the one of the top engineers there, right? So now he's moving over to OpenAI, and it's been said that he'll be looking over at GPT-6 and GPT-7 kind of architecture, and he'll be defining as to how to move forward there, right? We know that Gemini models and Google models are struggling a little bit, although they've released Gemini 3.5 Flash. They've still not released Gemini 3.5 Pro, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So which is where now will that happen, or that was the last assignment that Shazir has completed and now he's moving out? We don't know. We are still waiting for that release from Google. But in the meantime, we know that now OpenAI is probably got the top talent there, and their next models. So they'll be able to compete with at least Anthropic now. Hopefully, we'll get to see a lot better models from OpenAI very soon.
So the interesting thing is Shazir was the co-founder of Character AI. Character AI was a role play platform, and Character AI was sued by parents. OpenAI was sued by parents. So yeah.
So he brings in that study, that history of getting sued, which OpenAI is kind of used to, right? So they'll take care of that. So basically, that was one hire, and then Dean Ball, who's been hired from, he's an ex White House, OSTP senior policy advisor for AI. So he drafted that policy for AI. Now he's into OpenAI. So he'll ensure that all that policy documents are followed, and at least he finds out some loopholes there. So that's what, yeah, these are two major hiring that OpenAI has done prior to their IPO, and hopefully that'll
And he has, Dean Ball has been named as the head of strategic futures. Oh, I love the OpenAI's naming schemes. They always come out with very
The
interesting
designation that they give out to
Yeah.
people is very interesting. So that's the starting bit of OpenAI, and then OpenAI has some bad news as well.
That's right.
In the sense that their market share has been dropping, right? And so they have been pivoting away from chat-based interface into a super app kind of interface, right? Which is where, so was this a consequence of chat-based interface popularity going down, or was this because primarily the popularity was going down because they were focusing on something else? I'm not too sure. I personally have not used ChatGPT at least for now last 3 to 4 months. If ever I use like ChatGPT models, that would be primarily from their Codex platform, but I have not used the web interface. Yeah, I mean, I've never very rarely. That is the case with Anthropic as well. I have not used the Claude web interface at all. I'm only using it from Terminal UI. But then, yeah, I think a lot of people are still using that. But this will be a shocker for them. But so in this, I mean, my hypothesis is, in this era of AI, the products would come and go really fast, right? It will not be that you've launched a product, it will be there for a couple of years, or
That's right.
2, 3, 4 years, right?
Right.
Chances are you launch it, people will quickly use it, and then it will evolve into something better within 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and that's where you don't have to fall in love with any particular UI or any particular thing, even for a model for that. Where I think the evolution is pushing interface out, but alongside, I mean, this is something noteworthy that the popularity or the market share is going down below 50% for the first time, while Anthropic and Gemini are on the rise. So that's not a very positive news for OpenAI.
And while we're talking about web-based usage of these platforms, I actually recently used Sonnet after after months. Actually, I've not used Sonnet for a very good time, and the difference between Sonnet and Fable and Opus hit me like a brick. I mean,
I haven't used Sonnet for a long time. I mean, it's probably since I moved on to Opus 4.6, I think I've not used Sonnet at all. So it's probably more than two and a half months, right?
Yeah.
But my last recollection is Sonnet was a fairly good model, right? But what I've also observed with Anthropic is at times even 4.8 Opus would not perform up to the level that we expect. So chances are they're experimenting behind the scenes, right? They're modifying the model and trying it out rather than publicly disclosing it. So my guess is you hit that rough patch with Sonnet, because Sonnet was a very stable, very interesting model, and I kind of used to like it. It's just that now they've not been updating it, so I've not used it a whole lot. But yeah, so that's where I think it could be that rough patch that you faced. Maybe try it again sometime later in a day or two. Maybe you'll get that back. I mean, get that good model back again.
The thing is, these platforms, they're impossible to use on a free plan, because I ran out of my daily limit after 3 prompts with Sonnet. So yeah.
On
the free plan,
Anthropic is very running very short on. I mean, although they've got Colossus 1, but still they're running short on inference for GPUs, right?
Yeah.
So because they've got, although currently they're not serving Fable and Mythos, so I don't know why they would be running short. But basically, Anthropic is so much in demand. Everybody wants to use their models. So that's where I think they've kind of experimented with that.
Absolutely. And I mean, Sam Altman recently stated somewhere, right, that AI would be like a subscription platform, like you would pay for your electricity, you'd be paying for AI.
Absolutely. I mean, this has to become a default. Everybody will have to pay for it. Chances are, some people would be given subsidies from government side probably to use AI, because living without AI would be living without electricity, and that's not going to be possible. So that's where I think everybody will have to have some level of AI available for them.
Absolutely.
So then moving on to China, right?
China, that's right.
Yeah, China has been on a roll. I mean, ever since that Fable controversy happened, although every country has been, I mean, not every country, the countries that can afford to build their own sovereign AIs, they've been talking about, this particular debacle, right? But China has been making the most of it. So Chinese models have released their updated versions in last few days, and those models have made, huge leaps from where they were.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was always a fan of GLM 5.1 or GLM 5. If you've heard these podcasts or if you've looked at my Twitter, you'd have seen, GLM 5.1 used to perform really well. GLM 5.5 was also pretty good, right? But there were people on the net who were thinking that Kimi K2.6 was much better than GLM 5.1. Although in my experience, both are almost comparable, right? So that's where people were. But recently, GLM 5.2 was released.
Yeah.
I think around 12th itself, right?
Yeah, that's right.
On 12th itself, when Fable was taken out, Fable blackout happened. That's when GLM 5.2 was released, and GLM 5.2 has been in news ever since. I mean, it seems to have made such huge jump across the various benchmarks that everybody's talking about it, and everybody seems to be saying that it's almost at the same level as Opus 4.8. That's what, at least from the benchmarks, that's what seems like.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of these benchmarks, they state that it beats GPT 5.5.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not a huge model. For example, Opus 4.8 is probably a trillion token, or probably 4 or 5 trillion token model, right? It's a huge model.
Parameter.
GLM 5.2 is a 744 billion token model, which is fairly small. It's a mixture of expert, where you have 40 billion kind of expert, and then you have 744 billion total model, right? So it's a fairly small model, and for that model to be able to compare with these leading models, that itself is a huge thing, right? So what I have done is I've already started using GLM 5.2 with the agentic setup that I've got. I kind of earlier was using GLM 5.1 and 5, but I moved that to GLM 5.2. So I am not super impressed with the performance on my agentic harness, right? So that's where a concept of bench maxing comes in. Basically, a
Just trying
lot
to
of
get the
these
best.
models are kind of performing really well on benchmarks, but they're probably not as good in the real life experience, and which is what I'm kind of suspecting. So when I use Opus 4.8 level kind of model with my agentic harness, right, the kind of performance that comes out is mind blowing, right? You would so I plugged in GLM 5.2 expecting something similar, but it's underperforming. It's better than 5.1, it seems. I mean, although I've not been able to do a apples to apples comparison yet, but it seems like it's better than 5.1, but it's not at that level yet. My guess is it's probably not even at 4.6 level, Opus 4.6 level, or GPT 5.4 level. But then, benchmark, but people are going gaga over it. Across the Twitter, you will see, GLM 5.2 is performing so well. My guess is, I mean, this model would still take 3, 4, 5 months to come to at least Opus 4.8 levels, where it actually performs rather than the bench maxing kind of thing, right? So that's what my read has been. But it's MIT license. What that means is the weights are out there in the open. You can set it up on your hardware. You're not restricted by any US government or Chinese government for that matter, right?
Wow.
This is your model. You run it on your hardware and you do whatever you have to do, right? So just for a minute, think about it. About a year back, the models that we had were much inferior to GLM 5.2, right? Today we have that kind of model freely available. If you've got the hardware, you can run it anywhere, right? And this is what's going to continue to happen, and which is what is going to put pressure on US companies as well, right? Because if Fable is not coming out soon, and if GLM releases 1 or 2 versions more, then probably they'll surpass GPT or Opus 4.8, right? So that's where Chinese are making the most of this debacle that Anthropic is facing right now, and GPT or OpenAI is still kind of struggling with the next. I mean, it's been floating on the Twitter that they'll release their next model 5.6 very soon, but let's see when that comes out. So that's what's going on right now, and alongside, right, there were a lot more models that were released from China.
That's right. But the most interesting thing I found about GLM 5.2 was it costs 1/6 of what GPT 5.5 costs.
So the cost of Chinese models is their
Moat,
the most
basically.
important thing, right? That's moat, if you could call it. So that's the most important thing. Basically, they're like 1/10 or 1/6, 1/5 of the cost of Anthropic's models or OpenAI's models, and they're able to accomplish tasks almost.
They're 80% there, 85% there.
Yeah. So that's where Chinese model, and then if you get them to host. So for example, this model 5.2, there's some unsloth kind of application that kind of reduces it to 2-bit or 3-bit kind of application, 3-bit kind of model, which is where the performance is mostly retained, and then you can run it on a hardware that has 256 gigs of RAM kind of thing, right? So that makes it very, very available for anybody who's got a Mac Studio 5 12 GB kind of RAM or 256 kind of GB kind of RAM, right? So that's where these models are available for people to use on their local hardware, right? And then alongside GLM 5.2,
it was raining models in China this week. We've got Quen 3.7 Max, who's released by Alibaba.
Right. So that's not been open source. That is still closed. It's a 1 trillion kind of model. I haven't been able to try it. But Minimax M3 was released, and then Kimi-K 2.7 was released. Kimi-K 2.7, when it was released around let's say 12th of June itself, it was pretty much. So it's a 1 trillion kind of mixture of expert, which is more parameters compared to GLM 5.2. GLM 5.2 or 744, right?
744.
So Kimi-K 2.6 is a bigger model,
but with only 32 billion active.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of expert with 42 billion parameter for each expert. So, but it seems like Kimi-K 2.7 is now not better than 5.2. Although I've experimented experimented with both of these models, Kimi-K 2.7 as well as GLM 5.2. I have not been able to kind of distinguish between, where this one is better or that one is better, because it's not been substantial test for me yet. But yeah, but I'm looking forward to hosting Minimax M3 on my local setup, on my local, hardware Mac Studio, because that's only a 428 billion parameter kind of model, right? So 4 would be almost 200 GBs, right? Which can run easily on my Mac Studio. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'll probably run it this week, and then I'll, kind of report the numbers on that. But the Chinese models, like Akshay rightly said, raining this week, there's so many Chinese models. But a very interesting and different thing that happened was everybody's been talking about world models, apart from LLMs, right? So China launched a Physicist version 0.1 world model as well. Now this is where China is probably, US I don't think has launched any world model yet, right? So which is where probably China is taking the lead. Now this is a model which not only works on text, it works on physical world. So this could be used for the robotics, the robots coming out. So that's where these 4-5 different models came out very recently, and they are kind of beating the benchmarks across the board. So that's what's been very interesting for this week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's, I think, pretty much it on China side, right? Next,
about world models and their implication in robotics. Moving on to Bezos's Prometheus. So this is a company co-founded by Jeff Bezos, and he stepped down as the CEO of Amazon in 2021. He stepped up as the co-CEO of this company again. It was founded in November of 2025, but this week they raised $12 billion to achieve a $41 billion valuation. So basically what this company does is it focuses on physical AI, not just language models, and its implications in building the physical world. Jeff Bezos already owns the space exploration company Blue Origin. So yeah, this is where
absolutely. So we know that the frontier on LLMs is almost controlled by Anthropic and OpenAI.
Yeah.
Now the new frontier which is opening up is the physical space, right? So which is where all the robots. So every company, for example, Tesla and Amazon and Chinese companies, they are building a lot of robots, right? So those robots need brains as well, and that's where these world models come in, right? So I think Prometheus is all about creating that world model which will be used by these robots to navigate in the physical space and get things done. So they've started with a valuation of $41 billion and they've raised around $12 billion. So yeah, that came out on 11th of June. And a lot of investors like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and BlackRock, they've invested in the company, right? So basically it was founded in 2025, I think.
Yeah,
right?
November of 25.
Yep. Yeah. And Jeff Bezos and Vic Bajaj are the co-founders. So basically, yeah, physical AI, physical space AI is heating up, and that's where a lot of companies are getting founded. And because everybody knows that beating those frontier models from Anthropic and OpenAI is going to be super difficult. You have to pump in so much of money. But this is just a new frontier which is opening up. If you jump onto this right now, chances are in next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it will be the major playing ground, and this is going to be very big. And with a company such as Amazon, where you've got a lot of physical labor as well, this model would really help them. They've already missed the bus on LLMs, although not quite, but they're still trying to compete. But basically, it's going to be difficult. So that's where these companies are jumping onto this, world model kind of companies, and they're building their models there.
Right? So I mean, it's not directly tied to Amazon or Blue Origin, but it's funny because Elon founded SpaceX and then Jeff Bezos founded Blue Origin. Now Elon is combining SpaceX with Tesla, which will be making the Optimus robots. Now Jeff Bezos is working on physical AI.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They've been parallel to each other almost for the past.
So physical AI is the new frontier. I mean, where we are currently with LLMs like 2026, right? I think with physical AI will be there in about 2030 or a little earlier, or around 2029. So that's where the groundwork is being laid and new companies are being founded, and yeah, people are working on those models. So let's brace for that. I mean, yeah, it's not just the white collar jobs; it's probably blue collar as well, which are going to be impacted very, very soon. So yeah.
And in the beginning of this episode, we talked about how Anthropic was labeled as a supply chain risk by the
Yeah.
US government.
Yep.
That happened because Anthropic had refused to let the government use their models for unmanned drones.
Yeah.
But
And not only unmanned drones, basically, autonomous, basically warfare kind of things, right? Whether it's drones or rockets or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were kind of opposing that.
So this week, if you've been following the news, Ukraine, some things heated up between Ukraine and Russia again, and from a particular source, it was mentioned that this was the first time an autonomous Terminator drone was used in in this war, basically.
Yeah, so this is not a confirmed news. This
Yeah.
is just there were a few posts on Twitter or different websites where they said that autonomous drones were used by Ukraine for the strike on
warfare,
Russia,
yeah.
like earlier today, right? So that's what the news is. That was completely autonomous and no humans were controlling it, and they kind of humans were killed in that attack,
Yeah.
which is what completely was AI driven, which is a shocker if it happened, but this is not confirmed, so we are not too sure. But yeah, if it happened, that's like a Terminator drone kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is scary. Yeah, which should not happen, I think.
AI making the decision that a person shouldn't live is a massive thing.
That should not have been done. If it has been done, we don't know for sure. But so moving on to India this week, because of the first story that we did,
The Fable Blackout.
5, right? The blackout, right? A lot of chatter is going on that we are big enough country, we need our sovereign model, right? So that's what this. I mean, yeah, I've been following a lot of news around India. I've been following a lot of top people in Indian AI systems, and everybody's been kind of saying that we have the capability, and there has been a lot of debates going on how much money is required to build a 10 trillion or 1 trillion kind of model, right? So people are kind of estimating between $2 to $5 billion. There were some estimates which were saying 50 or 60 billion dollars, but that's where there's a huge divide as to how much money is required to build that kind of model. But will India be building it or not? That's a different story. I mean, that's is required. We should probably build, or a lot of people are saying there are so many very good models out there in open source. Bring them in here, fine tune them, or post train them, and then make them more fluent for Indian languages and stuff. But that is happening on the side. In the meantime, it seems like Sarvam is trying to tie up with Mistral, or they're trying to meet up and figure out something that they can collaborate or something, right? But all of that is happening because of the Fable blackout. And then basically a very interesting model came out this week from India, which was called Varya. Okay, this is a surprise video model which was built on top of by distilling Alibaba's WAN 2.2, but basically it's like almost 27x faster than the WAN 2.2 model. So they kind of did some modification in the architecture. They removed some layers and stuff, and the model, it seems, is at the same level, at the same capability level, but it's almost 27x faster.
Wow.
Right? So that was one of the biggest news here. And then
Okay, so we just discussed Varya, and along with that, Maya, a voice-first AI for Indian languages, was also released. And the most interesting thing is Maya 1 it's a open-sourced Apache 2 model. So unlike Sarvam's voice-based models for Indian languages, they were, we believe, closed source, right?
yeah, so they are basically API based. The
Yeah.
text to speech and speech to text both are API based. It seems like Maya is coming out, which is going to be open source, like you said, Apache 2.0 license. So we can run it on our hardware. And generally, voice models are really small in size, so it can be run on different laptops as well, right? So it's already released. People are already using it. We haven't tried it yet. But yeah, almost 3 million app downloads have happened on Hugging Face for this. 440,000 Hugging Face downloads have happened,
That
and
is very
almost
impressive.
3 million app
Apps
installs
installed.
have
Wow.
happened, right? So yeah, this is a big news, interesting news that Indian. So for the Indian languages, for Indian sovereign AI, which was talked about a lot this week. This is interesting that a new model, a voice model has come in, which is primarily trained on Indian languages and which could be used with the Indian languages. So yeah, a huge emphasis. Everybody is talking about having our own sovereign models. That's yeah. If we can have that, that will be very interesting. Alongside HCL Tech kind of invested in Sarvam.
Yeah,
Right? So
it's a
Sarvam
unicorn now. Absolutely.
Sarvam is a unicorn now, and they are probably looking to build a lot bigger models as well. So let's hope Sarvam's next model is the bigger, competes with at least 1 trillion kind of models across the globe. So that will be very interesting to have. So yeah, so Indian AI space is heating up, and we are hopefully trying to catch up with, at least be in the same league, because
So I think we've covered most of India's news. Is
Yep.
there anything you've been working on that was exciting?
So I've been working on a lot of things. I've been trying to fine tune a lot of models. I have been focusing on voice models lately, right? So like I said on the last pod, I was trying to fine tune a LFM model into Hindi and English, right? So I did some more work around that, and a new model has come out, which is really good with basically Indian languages. So I was kind of experimenting with that as well. It's slightly bigger model. It's a 5 billion parameter kind of model, but it's able to clone the voices very quickly. So that's what I was playing with, voice cloning and fine tuning that model. Nothing very interesting has come out yet. I've done a lot of experiments, but hopefully, yeah, I'm making some progress. Hopefully soon we'll have a very interesting model that we would be able to fine tune and use it for our own purposes. So that's what I've been heads down on. I've been completely focused there. But what have you been up to?
So in the last pod, we discussed about the video editing tool that I was working on. So while working on that, I got distracted and I was playing with Remotion, and I gave Cloud Code access to Blender. So I was creating a lot of fun 3D animations and videos around that. So
Awesome. So have you created something very interesting? I think I saw a video that you had shared with me, right?
yeah. So it took around an hour to generate 30-second 3D render using Blender.
Okay.
And it was very shabby. It was very low level work, but it was exciting to see that with zero intervention, it was able to use a complex software like Blender and create something which remotely resembled the prompt. We can actually put the video up for the viewers as well. And
Yeah, we'll put the video right here, and you had created a video with Remotion, which was a lot smoother and very interesting, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll put that here as well. Viewers can watch it out, and yeah,
it was basically a trailer and intro to the whole Fable situation. It was a single line prompt, and we can put it up for the viewers here as well.
absolutely. So you have been focused on creating videos and creating things like that from Remotion and stuff, which is very interesting space to be in. Yeah. So I mean, just so viewers are aware, the last podcast that we released was completely based on the product that you were working on. So we did not do any manual edits on that video, that on the podcast video. It was completely edited autonomously by that application that Akshan was working on. So if you've not seen that podcast, go back and look at that. If not, even in this podcast, now we're going to use that, that autonomous application, and that application itself is improving with every podcast, because we are observing some flaws there, and then we are fixing those flaws and making it better. So yeah, if you've not seen the last podcast, you should probably see, and then you can compare with this one and see how much improvement has happened, because now we are not editing these podcasts manually. We are reviewing it. We are just looking at what is happening, and then if at all something is wrong, we just go back and tell the agent to fix that up. So that agent is autonomously fixing the things up here. So that's something interesting. So we are kind of trying to automate our own work and try to
we're taking our own jobs. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm trying to eat our own dog food, and hopefully we'll probably once it stabilizes, we'll probably release it for people as well. Whether it will be open source or it will be available on SaaS, that we haven't decided yet, because it's still too far from that. But it's saving us a lot of time, because manual edits on podcast videos used to eat up a lot of time, and that's where we are saving, and we are investing it on further development of other tools.
I think that is it. We've covered almost every single news, and yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll try and stick to this weekly schedule now. Every Friday we'll probably come out with the, we'll do the podcast, and hopefully Saturday we'll release it. That's what we'll keep the schedule at least for now. And then I mean, news is happening almost every minute,
Every
every
hour,
day.
yeah,
Yeah.
every
So
minute.
that's where, yeah, there's so much to cover. But I think we've covered all the top level important news here. And if you've watched it till this point, thank you so much for watching. Just stay tuned, and we'll keep talking about the next ones as it comes along.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks for watching.